The real question that we're asking ourselves, how did these European religions find themselves into the African way of life and consider themselves as the final dictates of morality, of ethics, and of behavior? 2 or 3 levels of thinking can get on that. Number 1, it is the economics of the Bible, the economics of religion, where the church became the center of education, very strategically. When the religions came into Africa, particularly the Missionary Society, the London Missionary Society, as of 1903, coming this way, after the falling of the stars in Europe, the earthquakes in Europe, and the sun turning black during those days, people who were reading the scriptures, they heard that in the last days, the sun will go black, the stars will fall, there will be earthquakes and what. And when they saw these things happening, in their heads, they actually believed that Jesus was coming again. And before he comes again, let's go and Christianize the whole world so that we can expedite the second coming of Christ. So the disasters of Europe actually gave birth to the London Missionary Society. Boom, they came to Africa. What did they do? They put their shrines and temples and churches on all our sacred sites where we're worshiping. They only walk around Southern Africa. Most of the shrines and temples and monasteries are actually sitting on sacred mountains, sacred spaces. So they went and placed them. In some certain cases, like C.C. John Rhodes, even went to an extent of being buried on our most sacred site in Zimbabwe, where we used to do our sacred worship and etc. He put his graveyard right there, as if when you come here, you must see me first and worship me. And then they came up with the concept of institutionalization. These are schools which were built. And the strategic move of building school was critical. Because while the men were taken over to the industries and to the mines to work, the church was smart. It went back to the village where the men were no longer there. And the only man in the community was the father. How amazing. These are the Catholic fathers, the church fathers. So the only father in the community was the churchman, who became the father to our wives, to our mothers. It's not embarrassing to mention that in some of those communities, then colored children started to appear. And then you wonder whose children are they, because there was only one white man in the community and he's the father. And then you find all these colored children appearing. So the father was not just fathering in church. He started also fathering in our own homes and sleeping with our wives in the absence of the husbands. Some of those children were killed, of course, but the circus continues. That then the institutions, the academic institutions, then withdrew the children from the mothers in the absence of the fathers. And in these private schools, they started teaching the children education from its elementary levels, primary school, high school, boarding schools, college. And at college, the sharpest of minds would get scholarships.
What Maponga is exposing here is the true origin of religious conquest, the marriage between theology and economics. Europe didn't come to Africa to save souls. They came to secure markets. Religion was the first currency of colonialism. And like Maponga always say, religion is a foreplay fur colonization. The Bible came as camouflage, and the missionary was the advanced scout of the empire. They studied prophecy, saw earthquakes, thought their world was ending, and decided to come save ours. But their salvation was the perfect cover for occupation. They placed their churches on our sacred mountains to overwrite our gods, their schools beside their churches to reprogram our children, and their graves in our holy grounds to eternally anchor their ghosts among us. They didn't just conquer territory, they colonized memory. The priest replaced the king. The father in the church replaced the father in the home. And when the men were shipped to the mines, the fathers began to father children that looked nothing like the community. That's high-level genetic warfare. And that's how Africa was invaded. Not with swords, but with sermons.